Hello and welcome back to another episode of Voices of Western. This is the Humans of Western podcast, and my name is Hussein, your host for today. Today I'm joined by Nour Habliza, who is a Western University alumni and a second year, currently TMU law school student. Noor graduated with a degree in political sciences and criminology in 2022. And we have an exciting story of him to share, which is talking about how it's like to be a business owner while being a student during his time at Western. He started an auto shop and dealership company in 2020 that we'll be talking a lot about. I personally met Noor, I think, in 2018, around then. And one of the things that stuck with me about him was his courage of running for presidency in a cultural club that he just joined like a few months ago. These are like stories of resiliency and courageousness that I think we'll get the chance to cover, but more so things that shaped his story before starting these adventures. So without further ado, I will pass the mic to Noor. Maybe he can give us a bit more introduction about himself, and then we can kick it off from there.
Thank you, Hussein. I recall ASA my first year very fondly, and it was a fun time being able to run for president so early on into my university career. And yeah, so I went to Western from 2018 to 2022, and during my time there, I started Royal Auto Group of London, a used car dealership and full-scale repair garage. Scaled it all the way to up to 8 employees. Running a full-time business. Worked on it 2 years after graduation, and then I decided to make the move and go to law school, far away in Toronto, 2 hours away from my business, where I had to scale it down. And ultimately now I'm working on, sunsetting it and trying to find a potential suitor, who can buy the business, and maybe we can close that chapter. And that's just a couple of things about me.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And yeah, absolutely. It's been a whole exciting journey, and sometimes you can't start the next journey until you close the current one, which is totally understandable why you would want to step out. So maybe we can start with the very beginning, core childhood memories. What do you think about those experiences that shaped you the most when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think I've always been a go-getter. I've always been someone who wants to be a self-starter, do my own thing, go against the grain. Growing up in community housing, oftentimes there was a lack of mentorship in my communities. Nobody really to guide us on any type of paths. So it was, generally a trend where you had to create your own path. You had to sort of just go out there and make something happen, especially when there wasn't many who, I guess, believed in you. You were forced to believe in yourself. And I think those were some of the core building blocks that shape my personality and who I am today, and push me towards starting my own business and being an entrepreneur. You always hear the stories about, Gary V's and people like that who are always trying to say, hustle, hustle, hustle. And I think it's different when you want to hustle versus when you need to hustle out of necessity. And I think that was one of the core things that pushed me towards starting my own business. It was with a need to rather than just yeah, I feel like it would be nice to own a business. It was more of a situation where, I got laid off during COVID, was looking for some employment, and I thought, you know what, now's a better chance than ever. Let me just sort of try to start my own thing. And I think that's what sort of just caused that trajectory to go into business that way.
Right. And so when we look at starting a business, I think there are a few common points that people want to consider, whether it's expertise, funding, opportunities, and all of those things. When you started your very first business, did you have that expertise to start? Were you full in one of the buckets and then missing out on something else, or how did it happen for you?
Yeah, I think in terms of expertise and qualifications, like I had my car salesman license for about 3 years. I got it in 2017, and I was familiar with the car sales industry. I flipped a few cars on my own, And I've always been like a car guy, back to my childhood, right? You start off with the Hot Wheels and you upgrade into maybe more advanced racing games. And I was someone that was always like really interested in how cars worked. I feel like, you sort of go into a stream as a young boy. Either you're going to go into dinosaurs, you're going to go into cars, or you're going to go into sports. And I really liked cars. And I think that's why I ended up finding my niche. And again, I've always been involved around the car scene in London. I had other friends who were involved in the car industry as well. And I thought that was, that's something that I really do enjoy as a passion. So when you're able to turn your passion into a business, it's always going to be a great experience. And I think that's what ended up happening was, again, I had gotten laid off and I needed to do something with my time. And I thought, you know what? I've always said I wanted to sell cars, do my own thing, run my own business. Let me see if I can, get going here. And I ended up signing a lease for like a trailer with like 4 parking spots. And I never even got to start operating out of there because a couple of weeks before I moved in, I had gotten wind from another friend of mine's older brother who was moving out of his shop and dealership into a bigger space, and he needed someone to take over his lease. And he had came to me and he said, I have this lease that I need taken over. It's $2,000 a month. You get like 30 parking spots. You get a garage. I heard you're going into the car dealership game. This is a great way for you to kickstart your business because when you get to do repairs, you get to save so much money on overhead. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I'm trying to do that seriously. I was just sort of doing this as a side thing. They're like, listen, it's $2,000 a month. And I'm like, that's a good point. I was paying 1,600 initially at the first place. And I thought for $400 more and you get to almost like 10x your, inventory space for parking spots and you get to have a garage. It made just complete financial sense. So I decided to, go on to that. I canceled my initial lease, paid the penalty, and has probably been the best financial decision I've ever made in my entire life since then, and it's grown exponentially.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I remember we're touching on this topic of for only 400 extra dollars per month, you would get this many additional spots and a garage, which
Yeah.
would be its own moneymaker in a sense. Kind of like going back to that timeline, right? When when you were serious about starting this, was it people that were letting you know of these opportunities, or were you pursuing this idea of starting something yourself and then it just landed? Because I know some people, when looking for business, it can take them some time to kickstart things. So I'm curious how you get over that hurdle yourself.
Yeah, I think it's been something that was on my mind for a while, like even before. Like I was delivering pizzas for a long time, and for a very long time, I always wanted to be involved. Again, just working for myself. I hated waking up really early, like 8 a.m. to go into my shift. And I thought, man, I should make my own hours. Like this is
Yeah,
crazy. So wanting to just start a business was always on the forefront of my mind. Landing on cars sort of just happened by coincidence. Again, like it's something that I knew well. I had the certification for it already, so it was just one less barrier for me to go in.
right.
And then, just basically getting the logistics down was a lot of just self-navigation myself. I went online to Omvic, went through the whole application. They make it pretty straightforward too. It's not rocket science or anything, right? They give you like a whole checklist, like they make it as easy as you can. And then again, after that, once I was going through my checklist, it's like, okay, incorporate a business, start a bank account for your business, show some capital, show your license certification, find a location. So when I got to the finding the location part, was just sort of a situation where I go on like Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, maybe tap into some of my other friends that were like mechanics and asked them if they had heard of anything that, um, just like anything like around. And I landed on my first place again, just through like a Kijiji ad. Um, and I remember actually, initially I went to another like bigger location, like a showroom, and it was also a pretty good deal, but we couldn't get the lease signed because there was, I guess, like some contracting issues with the city of London and trying to go through like permits with the city that also came into place with a lot of different like regulatory issues along the way that I just sort of just navigating myself, and I didn't really have any experience in that, so it was just sometimes like fake it till you make it kind of thing, and it worked
Yeah.
out pretty well sometimes. Sometimes people couldn't tell that I was only like again 20 years old with no experience, but there are times where people did know and they're like, "Yeah, I don't think you know what you're talking about here. You're too young. We don't really want to sign a lease with you because we don't think you're going to be able to make the payments with such a new business." And I thought, hey, that's fair. So there were some of those like I guess barriers and growing pains that you sort of just have to figure it on your own. And I don't really have a business degree per se. I didn't go to Ivy or anything like that. But I think just being inside, just these rooms, negotiating with people who have been in the business field for so long is was a great classroom for me per se to learn how to, I guess, navigate these complexities.
Great. And I think one of the important aspects you mentioned was community support. So your friend's older brother who told you about his place,
Yeah,
I'm sure you would not have heard from him if you had not actively told people that you were looking to do this.
exactly.
Which is amazing when you put things outside in the universe and ask for help. Perfect things show up at the perfect time. And just like thinking back to the initial lease that you signed, there's no way you would have had 8 employees, I don't think, for that small of a space. So it
No
all
chance.
worked out in a really nice way.
And I
Um,
remember signing off like the breaking of that first lease. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to pay like another like $2,500 to cancel this lease. And man, this like I was like reluctantly signing, like, this is really worth it. And then like even like then, just in hindsight, everything is so much clearer at the time, right? Trying to take that big leap of faith, you're a little bit nervous, you're scared. You don't know where your money's gonna go, if you're going to make money on this venture or not. So just being able to build the courage up of just taking the chance. I remember now. So now I'm like, hey, if there's an opportunity in front of you, you should seize it no matter what. I tell all my friends.
Absolutely. When you got that shop, did you inherit any of the customers or did you start with zero customer base? You had to go and basically hunt for your own customers. How did it work?
Yeah, I basically started with zero because he wasn't going out of business, right? He was just moving, and he wasn't moving very far. Actually, he only moved like I think a kilometer away. So I didn't really have any customer base. And he again, he was a good friend. So anytime there were times where like his customers would come to me, they'd be like, "Oh, is George here?" And I'm like, "No, he's not. Like he moved actually." And I would always sort of direct them to where he is. I never believed in sort of trying to take any of those guys on. And we also serve different markets at the same time, right? So and but again, things like that work out for you because let's say they go to George at his newer location and he's obviously increasing his costs, so he's increasing his fees. Maybe they can't afford to deal with George anymore now because he's a lot more of a grown business. So they end up coming back to you like, hey, you were really nice when helped us find George and we couldn't work with him or he's too busy maybe we couldn't he couldn't get us in time. Can we sort of come and do it here? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. We can definitely squeeze you in. So I didn't really inherit their business, but I sort of still had to earn it in a way. And again, just by being a friendly person, I also really earned my business through my connections. I had other friends. I'm very well connected in my city. Friend of a friend who tells somebody, hey, like, yeah, my brakes are making a noise. Oh, I know a guy, my friend Nour. So that was a great way for me to develop business. And then full circle moment back to ASA. I would like sponsor ASA events, right, or other university club events. And that was a great way for me to earn business. I had initially, I think, made like $1,000 sponsorship. And I ended up selling a car to this one student. I think that car, like I made like 2,500. So automatically made my money back and then some, right, on the investment within like a couple days. And then of course the repairs that would come by after that, right? People who would come need tires changed, oil changed, like things like that. Was a great way for me to market a community that I was raised in, or a community that made me who I am today.
Oh, that's amazing. It's always best to help students out as well
Of
with
course.
friendly rates. I do remember you having some sort of advertisements and offers for students. So that's amazing. One question, do you recall any of your, I guess, wildest strategies in attracting new customer? Wild in the sense that it was like super creative, outside of the box, or it could just be as simple as posting a Facebook ad.
Yeah, I took a lot of unorthodox approaches to, developing business. And it came from just the salesman in my heart, right? I was always just trying to find out different ways. Like I was being creative in terms of like I would like talk to my friends who were tow truckers. And I would say, hey, you guys are tow truckers. How about we get a deal going where if you're called for a broken down car and they don't have anywhere to go, tell them that you know a shop, bring it to me, and I would give them like an incentive. So let's say, I think with like a flat rate, I'm like, yo, I'll give you like minimum. $50, depending on the repair. And if it's anything more, maybe I'll give you like 10% of what I bill to them after costs. So that was just like a easy way for me to just like sort of develop business there. And another way I was doing it was just sort of like just talking to anybody. Like I would meet new people and they'd be like, oh, like I'm a newer, blah, blah. Like people are like, oh, I'm in school for this. That. I'm like, yeah, I just graduated. I actually own my own car dealership and repair garage. I'm like, oh, you're a car dealer, you're a mechanic, yeah. And I also posted on Instagram a lot too. Like, that was a great way. I don't know if you remember, I post people's like worn down, worn down brake pads and all like the craziest things that used to come into my shop, and people would always interact with those posts and be like, "Oh my God, like I want to come to your shop, but I'm scared you're gonna shame me." I'm like, "It's okay, don't worry, come. I'll anonymize your name." So that was just like a interesting way for me to just be on social media and have fun with it. But again, as people saw me post on my Instagram story, on my personal Instagram story, all like I guess like the terrible states of their cars, they're like, hold on, maybe I should go take my car. And I don't know if my car actually looks like this or not. And that was a great way for me to bring customers in that way too.
That's good. And so, like thinking back to those peak operating times at the time where you were managing 8 employees, I imagine for the first time ever being in school. Can you give us a bit of insight into the experience of managing team members who were older or much older than you?
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience. So initially, I had hired one of my close friends to sell cars with me, and me and him we did pretty well together. And I had another mechanic as well. So initially, started with just three from the beginning. And as business developed, we got into different spaces. So we had two mechanics running at once. We'd have like auto body guys for like car accidents, dealing with insurance companies and things of that nature. And once we grew this team, a lot of these people that you're getting, people who are veterans in their craft, have been in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years. And it's very weird coming from an ethnic background like myself, where you're sort of giving orders to people who are a lot older than you, especially when you're taught to sort of show respect to your elders. You don't speak up, you don't speak until unless spoken to, and you speak in a very, respectful way. So maybe if something I had ever, so trying to balance that was a bit interesting, especially when maybe I thought a job should have went one way and they thought a job should have went another way. Um, and again, although I'm young, I still have seen a bunch of different experiences, and I know um, what certain repairs will yield what kind of results in the future, and how to take care of the customer. And they would disagree and say, no, I don't think that's the right way. And having to sort of like lay, you know, the boundaries and put my foot down, got kind of awkward sometimes. And I thought, how am I going to tell this person who is like 45 years old, this guy could be my dad, um, you know, tell them that no, we're actually not going to do that, and that's not going to happen. Or having to scold them if they had made a mistake and tell them, hey, like, you can be patient with people that make mistakes, but at the same time, you also got to make sure that they're held accountable for their mistakes, because it is a business at the end of the day. So trying to sort of balance that was a little bit awkward for me at first, and I think that just came with practice and not practice that, but like just continuously doing it and building up the confidence, getting more comfortable and realizing, hey, they're not bigger than the business, and the goal is to make sure that the business is thriving. So as I just sort of got more comfortable with that, that sort of involved that, sometimes they would argue with each other and I would have to sort of manage people's expectations, manage their boundaries, shifts, even. I'm like, okay, you know what? Just so I don't have them working together at the same time, let's try to schedule these shifts at a different time. And, that takes away from other really important things that I need to be doing as well, like developing business, trying to find clientele, trying to find cars to buy so I can market them and sell them. So having to deal with the management side of a business, it's really, really challenging with working with all these different moving parts in a business.
Were there any, so I know you mentioned about one of the effective strategies of scheduling them at different times or people who work well together at the same times. Were there any sort of strategies that you implemented that were not really effective or didn't help in the long run?
Yeah, I think there were times where I would try to just do too much at once. Again, although I had a garage, it wasn't a big garage. It was only one day, so I couldn't do a lot of work at once. And if you think about it, a mechanic shop makes its money on, I guess, like a flat rate per se. So you bill a 3-hour job. Um, and maybe the mechanic that gets it done in 1 hour or an hour and a half, the mechanic gets paid 3 hours. I still bill the same 3 hours, but we just got it done a little bit faster. We get to move it out and bring a newer car in. So you can build almost up to like an 8 hour workday. You can have like 12 hours of work build, if you're just working efficiently. But when you only have one hoist, let's say a part comes incorrectly, or you're working on something that breaks, that's going to push you back on your schedule now. And what I ended up trying to sort of do was have work, have the one car come in on the hoist, and then right behind it, I would have, the job being done on the floor with like a jack stand. Maybe it's like tires or something like small, quick. And then maybe I'll leave the bigger jobs inside. And there were times where it worked well. I was able to get the quicker one in and out. But then the other issue is if the one I'm working on the floor, those parts came incorrectly, and I got the one on the hoist done, I can't get that one out anymore because it's blocked by the car that's on the floor that's like right in front of there, right? So I can't back that car out. I have to basically wait to sort of get a new car in. So having that, I guess, tandem avenue and working on two cars at once, when I was trying to be efficient, sometimes proved to be inefficient actually and cost me more time or more money. Um, and you know what? Like you live and learn, right? You try to figure it out. Um, I still continue doing it after, but in a more strategic way. Maybe like just like easy oil changes or tire swaps rather than maybe full on brake job on the floor. So I didn't block the car that was already inside that needed to come out.
Right. That's a very interesting reflection and a very technical one as well, because
Yeah,
I was trying to imagine how the different parts in the auto shop
I hope it made
work
sense.
together. Yeah, yeah. No, I think the hand gestures definitely helped understand what was going on at the time. And so I guess like the exciting part is also, or maybe not exciting, depending on your lifestyle at the time. I'm not sure. We'll figure it out. So you were a student, right? And running a full-time business is no joke. I'm wondering, how did those times go by? Any sort of, I'm sure lifestyle did have some sufferings or something had to give. Do you recall those times and what they were?
Yeah, like, my personal life, my, school, academic life, definitely there were some sacrifices that had to be made. My friends want to go to the beach on a random Wednesday in the summer. Where that's operating hours, that's business hours, right? While
Yeah.
everybody's off for school, maybe they're working part-time jobs, or even if they're working full-time jobs, but a Wednesday is off for them. It's not, it can't be off for me. I have to be at the business. I have to be at the shop. Times where I'm working late. A job needs to get done, for tomorrow morning, and we can't go because I have a new job coming in at 9 a.m. the next day. So I need this car out of here. So I'll stay till 9, 10 p.m., missing out on birthday dinners, going out with my friends. And looking back in hindsight, was it worth it? I don't know. Like, as humbly as I can say, the business made good money. So it was definitely a trade-off that I was interested in. I'm like, making money, I'm doing well for myself, and I'm sacrificing certain things. I got to drive, new cars all the time. I got to go on vacations that I never would have imagined to be able to go to as a result of it. But again, like I said, there was some sacrifice that had to be made in my personal life, relationships that suffered because maybe I would have plans at, let's say, 7 p.m. and canceling those plans last minute. Friends are not always happy when you're canceling plans last minute. Hey guys, sorry, I got to stay late at work. So they're frustrated with you now because they think that you don't value their time. And it's not that, it's just that, the job, it was a lot more. You better off it whenever you can, but business and you have professional clients that you have a duty to. So being able to make sure that you're able to sort of attach uh, you know, that to your life and meet those expectations. Well, just a consequence of running a business. And I think, any business owner will tell you that you're going to make sacrifices. I didn't have like kids or or like a wife or anything like that to worry about. But, I can imagine if I had kids or a wife and I'd miss basketball games, recitals, things like that. Like it just has to happen when you're a business owner, that people often tend to forget. And I would ask them, like, hey, just try to keep in mind, just give me a little bit of grace.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, were you able to work towards a schedule that the shop was self-sustainable without you having to be there all the time? Did you have the chance or opportunity to do that, or were you just there all the time and um, without exceptions.
Yeah, like I was able to sort of eventually work it up to a certain level of efficiency where I didn't need to be there all the time. I coached basketball during my time running the shop as well at my old high school. So, for example, basketball practice would probably start at like around 2:30. So I'd just, hit Highbury 401, get down to Exeter Road, Wellington to over to RMC, coach for about 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half, and then just zip back for 5 o'clock. So being able to, just rip out an hour and a half, 2 hours out of my day was sometimes a bit challenging in the middle of the day, but I made it work with again just the efficiency of how the business ran. Um, but I didn't like doing it. And I think I made it efficient and self-sustaining when I needed to, because I wanted to, maybe have other commitments, like I said, such as coaching basketball or volunteering and trying to stay true to some of the passions that I had outside of the basketball world. But generally, I liked being there. I enjoyed my time there. I enjoyed being at the shop. I enjoyed interacting with the customers every day. So like, if my friends wanted to plan a beach day on like I said, a Wednesday morning, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to beach day," and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can afford to go, and I can just have my guys take care of it for the rest of the day. But
Yeah.
I like being here. I like working. I can't really enjoy my time when I'm at the beach if my phone is also blowing up. My mechanic's like, "Hey, we're looking for this, looking at that." So like, if I'm going to take to step away and go to the beach and relax and enjoy my time, I want to actually enjoy it. I don't want to have my phone ringing every 10, 20 minutes. Hey, what do we do here? Hey, what's going on here? Hey, what's the deal here? Blah, blah, blah. So having to deal with that was kind of a bit of a challenge. So I ended up just choosing oftentimes just stay at the shop, just stay at the business. Even if I could have left, I just enjoyed just staying there, making sure everything was under control and the business wasn't on fire.
Speaking about hiring, I'm curious as a young business owner with different perspectives than older generations. I'm wondering what kind of hiring practices you used when hiring people, or in simpler terms, what did you look for? Were those things that you were looking for qualities that ended up proving to be the right ones?
Yeah, I think early on I made some mistakes, and it was because it was the market. The market also really dictates how you hire. Mechanics were very hard to come by. Again, it was COVID, so a lot of people were getting CERB. Um, if I'm being fully transparent, the first person that I hired, my first mechanic didn't have a driver's license. He had one, but he had it suspended due to a DUI. But his experience was extensive. He was a mechanic at like Chrysler Dodge for like, 4 or 5 years, was a mechanic at BMW for 3 years, and then was like a shop manager at Nissan for another 3 years. And he ended up losing his job because of his DUI. So being a small business, um, hiring someone with that kind of experience is very, very costly. So being able to get, a bit of a discount per se on his hourly rate because he per se he didn't have a driver's license, he couldn't drive the cars. I had to drive them myself with him in the passenger seat and test them after the repairs. Um, was a sacrifice that I made, but it sort of like balanced itself out, right? And as you build that relationship with them, once he eventually got his driver's license back, he could have went back and left and went back to being a service manager in another shop. They would have hired him easily. And again, there was such a need for mechanics at the time. But he had built such a close relationship that he had just, he enjoyed what we were doing at my shop. Um, we realized how much money we could make, and I was, cutting him in on a lot of the profits that the business was making just so I could keep him and stay competitive in my hiring. And then when I hire other mechanics, you know, trying to keep them satisfied as well, but not, like he was getting paid more because of his experience and because of his loyalty. You can't justify hiring someone new with that kind of rate. So trying to sort of balance, salary expectations with people was something that I was looking at when I was making the hiring decisions and letting them know, like, this is what we're getting, this is what we're paying here. If it works for you, welcome aboard. If not, no problem. And again, the personalities in the blue collar world are very jaded, right? You don't always have the same level of professionalism that you'd see maybe in like a white collar out of office. Um, and having to sort of manage that and interact with people like that, it's a bit of it's a bit of a learning curve. Me, I had never been someone that was too overly professional. Again, coming from community housing, I had more of that like jaded, rougher background and interaction with people, so I was able to sort of quote unquote speak their language kind of thing, and let them know that this is a place where we don't deal with no BS, and I'm not going to be the one that deals with it. So being able to sort of just let that be known from the beginning, because a lot of the times people are going to try to, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So when you're hiring, you set the standard early on and let them know that this is what the standard is here. This is how I run the show. Um, was something that I really looked out for. And again, the experience has always really mattered. I wanted to make sure that I could see quality work. There are people that lasted 3 weeks at my business because their work wasn't what they said it was. And there are people that lasted, the whole 5 years. So trying to just, trial and error with hiring was also something that happened very often.
Yeah, I love that. Following up on something you said, why do you think the blue collar jobs or like people who join those roles are a bit more jaded than if we're just like comparing them to the white collar jobs? And I'm sure it's like not everyone and there's an exception, but
hmm
curious.
No, you know what? I saw the biggest the contrast when I was interviewing for law firm jobs here on Bay Street. And you know what? At the end of the day, everybody will go after work and have a beer, sure. But how you interact in the workplace, with the HR professionals and things like that, huge difference, huge difference. And it was even a learning curve for me now trying to sort of shift to, again, the white collar way of speaking. I think it just comes with, I guess, maybe level of education and sophistication that comes with it. I think, university degrees have like this level of like professionalism that they want to teach. And then when you go to higher education like law or like corporate finance, things like that there's like a level of, how you speak that is really like ingrained in it. It's like an old boys club. They try to just keep the traditions involved. Where I think in the trades, the traditions aren't as big. Um, I think again, historically, you see maybe people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds get into trades, um, which is ironic because the trades oftentimes can make a lot of money and a lot more than some of the white collar jobs that people are aiming for. But I think again, just not having as many regulations or not having as many rules or traditions allows for people to be themselves a little bit more. Um, and whether that's better or worse, I think it's up to everybody else. I personally really enjoyed it. I liked, that raw aspect of the interaction. I liked people just saying what they need to say. There are times where I couldn't put a mechanic in front of a client because I just didn't know what was going to come out of his mouth. Uh, and I would be the one that was able to balance that. You go to like a brand new dealership, like a Honda, the person who's working on the cars is not the person that's interacting, right? They have a service advisor, and the advisor is the HR, PR trained individual who can speak in layman's terms, speak to the customer, sell them on the repairs. But the mechanic, even at like the big dealerships, he's not really interacting with the clients because what's he gonna say? You have to be like that mouthpiece. You have a little filter with the service advisor, and I think I tried to figure it out whenever I could, but I like my business being honest. I was a young entrepreneur who was serving people who needed help and couldn't afford, $200 per hour shop rates. And that's just what it was here, right?
Yeah,
You want to come in and see a real experience, come to my shop, come to Roll Out a Group. We'll take care of you for a good price, and we're not going to, serve you a spoonful of BS.
right. I enjoyed the answer. Very insightful. Thank you for sharing that. And you know what? I think talking about money now is a perfect time to jump into our hot takes section for this episode as well. So the statement today is buying a car fully in cash. Smart move or financial misstep? What's your take?
Terrible, terrible idea. Now, if you buy it in cash, now there's obviously some caveats. Generally, if you're buying a car under $10,000, you know what? Sure, you can buy it in cash. It's not that big of a deal. You probably won't even get it financed. But when you're buying 20, $30,000 cars, buying those in cash is very um, financially irresponsible, I will say. And it's because assuming you have $20,000 in cash to spend, okay, you're going to want to use that $20,000 is more valuable to you in a investment account rather than a depreciating asset. You're going to buy a depreciating asset either way, right? So because of the depreciating asset, you are better off financing a depreciating asset than investing, all your capital, your liquid capital into it. I'll give you the analogy. And again, the caveats here are making sure you have a great interest rate, you have a great payment plan, you get certain type of protection like gap insurance. Let's say you buy a $25,000 vehicle and you finance it over 6 years at let's say you have good credit and you're getting a 4% interest rate. You have that same $25,000 in cash. You could have bought it. You invest that 25K in the S&P 500, easy stock. You're making about 9% safely year over year. It's done well for the past, like, I think it's had like maybe three losing years since like 2005 or something like that. Like it's a very well performing stock, a very strong performing stock. So you're making 10% every year on that 25K, and you're paying 4% interest on your 25,000 dollar loan, right? You're up 6% now on your initial $25,000 principal. Your car still depreciated the same way over that 5 year finance that you financed it for, no matter what, it's still depreciated. But you made 6% on 25,000 for 5 years. So at the end of those 5 years, at the end of the financing rate, you own that vehicle. It's worth what it would have been worth if you bought it in cash either way. But now you have 6% of 25,000 for over 5 years and whatever other fluctuations. Assuming you make those payments to the car, right? You're in a pretty good position overall now. Versus if you had just paid $25,000 to that vehicle upfront in cash, you have the same depreciated asset. You've paid even more money with interest, and then you haven't really invested your money anywhere. You haven't made any money on your initial capital. You've just sort of, earned your hourly wage or earned your biweekly check. You've paid it in, and you're done now. So it doesn't make any sense to really buy a car in cash. Again, making sure the interest rates are affordable. If a dealership is giving you 15% interest rate, maybe not, right? Then that doesn't really make that much sense. Making sure you get gap insurance is also something that's very key because, God forbid anybody who has a car gets an accident. Let's say you have $10,000 left on your loan, but your car's only worth 6 grand. The insurance company will pay you what it's worth. That other $4,000 in negative equity, you're on the hook for. So getting gap insurance will be able to cover that. So like these certain little tips and tricks that you can do along the way to cover yourself. Yes, the gap insurance is going to cost a lot more. That's where like, negotiating and everything like that comes in, but it's a very great safety net in a market where, again, you're buying a depreciating asset. COVID was a little bit interesting because the cars appreciated. So it didn't really make sense. That's like an anomaly. That's a market anomaly. That'll never happen again. But who knows? But generally, the rule of thumb is you buy a car at a great rate. I usually recommend under 7 to 8% to build your credit. And if it's over that, maybe buying a car that much is not in the cards for you. Maybe you buy a little bit of a cheaper car for $6,000, $7,000 in cash, build your credit elsewhere, credit card payments. In order to have a robust credit so you can go finance a car later on at a lower interest rate. And then again, you can use your capital to make more money elsewhere.
Right. Yeah, no, a lot of great points. And it wouldn't be a hot take unless there's a differing opinion to that. So I was telling Noor that I'm gonna ask him this question because I am quite the opposite side. I have the different opinion. And Dave Ramsey is on my side as well. He's a popular internet personality who talks about finances, mortgages, and a lot of things. For the most part, I think what Noor talked about, the opportunity costs of not having the funds invested in the market, is true and makes sense. But I think one of the pieces that was not covered is the emotional piece, which to me is very valuable. Like I would rather buy something in cash, own it, have that peace of mind that I own it, as opposed to tying myself up to monthly payments. And I will tell you why. I think a lot of people, when they finance cars or lease or do anything other than buying it full outright, is they also inflate how much they can really afford. So if they could have afforded to buy it, as you said, like 15, $20,000 car, now they are financing $100,000 vehicle because they can. And so I have problems with this whole idea of getting yourself in debt and not owning everything outright because you can. I don't think that is good for you. I am proponent of the fact that not all debt is good, and I'll give you the chance to also oppose this idea. But I think everyone in the West just thinks you should do this just because you can, and a lot of people have not experienced that free life and what it's like to not have liabilities on your side. Now, obviously, we're talking about business, owning a business, starting a business. I think these are the risks you have to take in, take out a loan for, or getting a mortgage. A lot of people these days can't afford to buy everything in cash, so that makes sense. But like going and financing your newest iPhone, your car, like whatever home utility item. Why? If you can't buy it in cash, why would you put yourself in a position to be paying for it monthly? So that's my take. I think cash, even though you're giving up on some gains in the market, I think for me at least it's worth it. But yeah, you get your chance here. Now challenge my opinion.
now Hussein, I want to say first of all, I agree with you on the sole fact that you shouldn't finance something that you can't afford to buy in cash. That's very key. Now, the emotional aspect of it is very important, and I've heard it a lot, and my dad's the same way as you, and I think that's a very Eastern mentality actually is to you never want to buy in debt. You want to buy everything. You don't want to have any debt. Debt is very frowned upon, in the Middle East, and a lot of Eastern cultures. But that's only because um, there may not be as many safeguards or institutions that are able to uphold what happens when the debt isn't able to be paid. So it's sort of a situation where, like, if like my dad always be like, I don't want to die, owing anybody money, blah blah blah. Like, and I'm like, yeah, I guess I understand what you're saying. Um, and you don't want to look at your account and see like a big, interest rate, constantly accumulating, and it gets very challenging. I agree, 100%, and it makes sense. But that's where you got to look at these like certain caveats and making sure that your debt is good debt, not bad debt. And there's two kinds. There is good debt and there is bad debt. Bad debt is, terrible interest rates that are, predatory even. And there are situations where I've seen debt get financed at, exorbitant amounts. I know someone that would finance maybe $50,000 of a vehicle, and it would be something like, 10%, 12% interest rates. A 12% interest rate is ridiculous. Nobody is able to afford a 12% interest rate at such a high debt amount. But if you're getting it at, I mean, like 4%, 5%, and these debt rates are usually, grounded by what the Bank of Canada is going to sort of, set for you. That's where you look at different situations where, um, you know, you're able to now afford it and you're able to sort of make that money, make more money for you when you're able to afford it. So think about it like this. Most businesses, like the largest corporations, are running debt in their corporations. And it's on the sole fact that you have a corporation, you're better off not having your asset, like your liquid assets in that corporation when they could be making more money elsewhere for you. You can still run your business. My biggest mistake was starting my business on capital, like my own capital, rather than using somebody else's. And this might not be a great opinion, but let's say, God forbid, your business does terribly, or the market crashes in terms of like business market, and your business fails,
Yeah.
but you have taken out all your profits and you've liquidated them in your own pocket, and you owe, let's say, like $300,000. At least your business is on the hook for the $300,000. Whoever loaned you the money owed 300. It's sort of like a liability on that front, and you were able to sort of secure your own $300,000 in your pocket. You can go do something else now. Yes, there's like different, and I'm oversimplifying it here. There's other ways of debt collection and things like that, but if you think about it, it's like a security thing as well to have debt. That some people don't think about it, and I think it's just a way of thinking. Is the security is you keep your own money, keep your own cash. I think there was this one quote, I think it was Kevin O'Leary who said it, or maybe somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but it's like, don't spend your own money. Spend other people's money. You should always spend other people's money. Why the heck would you want to spend your own money? You keep your own money in your own pocket and other people spend their own money elsewhere. And then you spend other people's money and then you're good. That way, if their money, disappears Why is it your money? And again, it sounds a bit unethical, and I don't mean it like, again, you should always take proper business practices and make sure that you're being responsible with other people's money. But like the emotional aspect of, you're worried about your money or you're worried about that, just keep your own money. It's safer to keep your own money with you and you're able to make that money work for you and make more money for yourself than it is to sort of have that money go into a business where, again, I could have bought a bunch of cars with $300,000, right? None of them could have sold. And then I'm out $300,000 versus I financed that $300,000. None of them sold. It's not my $300,000 that I lost. It's RBC's $300,000 that they lost.
Right. Yeah, no, I think financing or the way you use that to your advantage in business is definitely different than the way you should use it in your personal life. Personal life, I wouldn't be so comfortable, but business, I think that's the only way to grow and go further. And I think there was a statistics that said banks for every dollar of deposits they get, they loan out $9. Something like this,
Wow.
which is wild. So if all those people who have their deposits in come in and want their money out, there's just not enough cash
Yeah.
or fund
Yeah.
in the system to give them out, which is why we see all of these daily limits on withdrawals, on e-transfers, and these
Yeah.
different things.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. Anyways, moving on to today, where you are a second year law student at TMU. Can you tell me a bit more about what brought you to here, considering your path previously was a business owner, or even currently a business owner who's studying law school?
Yeah, I think being going to law school is always one of my dreams and one of my aspirations growing up. Going to law school was going to be a for sure thing for me. I took a little bit of an unorthodox approach to law school, starting my own business, moving, maybe a little bit, off the tracks, and that's just been, I guess, the story of my life. Um, but even when I was starting the business and working on it, that was still in the back of my mind. And there were days where I was studying for the LSAT at my shop, knowing I wanted that goal. Ideally, it would have made sense to go to law school in London. Um, but when that opportunity wasn't there, and I had an opportunity to, move out of London, um, I had to balance my offers. I had to balance my career goals, and I knew my career goals, if they weren't going to be in London, they were going to be in Toronto. Um, and working in corporate law in Toronto was the ultimate goal. So I ended up just deciding to take a chance on it, and I thought, you know what, I've done well in this business. It's made money, but you know what, you get tired, right? 5 years is a long time to work on a business, and it's a very physically demanding business on your body, right? Lifting winter tires, getting dirty, getting my hands cut up, hurting myself all the time. Like it's very hard. Um, and although I loved, the go-getter spirit and hustler spirit, um, I thought maybe it's time just to get a little bit of a break and have someone just tell me what to do. I collect my check every 2 weeks and sit pretty, I don't want to say easy, but like I don't have as many headaches to worry about. Still a lot of headaches. I don't want to undercut law. Law is a very difficult and very challenging profession, very mentally taxing profession. But at this point, it's already an established business that I'm going to be working for. So I'm sort of just able to step into somebody else's shoes and step into a full scale functioning, well successful business and don't have to worry about new ways of strategizing and marketing a business rather than when I can just move focus on like more like of a niche legal aspect of the business now.
And even now, probably the clients that you will be working with, I'm not sure which sector of law you will be specializing in, but if they're business owners, now you can relate to them much better and have a sense of where they're coming from
Exactly.
when
And
trying
that's
to
exactly what it
act.
is. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it is.
perfect. There's only one more question left, and it's the mystery question. So, for listeners that don't know, Mr. Question is the question that our previous guest leaves for the next guest. So, you will also be doing this for our next guest as well, which is being revealed just now on this recording for the first time. So, the question that our previous guest has left for you is, what is a life skill you learned during your time at Western that has proven invaluable in your life post grad? And
Okay,
you can take your time.
no, that's a great one. I think well, I learned a lot of things at Western, and I think the number one thing was just being a nice person. A lot of the times, best opportunities were just from being approachable with people. People like, hey, I know we've never talked before, but you just seem super nice, and I wanted to just reach out and just ask me for help on just different random things. And that has paid dividends over time, right? Whether it was people coming in and approaching me for my business, or when I was studying for my LSAT, people would come and ask me for LSAT prep help or law school prep help. People are always just coming in and asking me for help, right? So being approachable is very, very important because you build connections that you don't know how valuable they're going to be in the future. And even if they're not going to be valuable in the future at all, it'll come back to you in a good karma kind of way. And I think of the quote that, it's nice to be important, but it's important to be nice. And I really try to embody that a lot. And I learned that a lot at Western is that when you're a nice person and people know that about you and you build a reputation of just being a nice person, um, it's going to be something that comes back to you. And I continue doing that every day, whether I'm in law school, whether I'm working at my business, whether I'm, at the law firm, all the time. It's just being able to just be a nice person, be approachable with people, and they're going to be very graceful with you in return.
It's amazing. Any final words? Anything else you want to share as we wrap up this episode?
I think just the piece of advice I would give to people who want to start their own business, you want to escape the 9 to 5, 100%. But just keep in mind, you're going to be working 9 to 9, maybe even, you don't want to work 8-hour days, but you're going to work in 14-hour days. So if the issue is that you don't like working long hours, maybe entrepreneurship is not for you then, because I don't know any entrepreneur that was able to work less hours than a regular 9 to 5. Another thing is everybody gets paid before you. So, what you see, maybe $10,000 come in. Well, you got to pay your landlord, and then you got to pay your employees, and you got to pay the bills, and you got to pay, for the inventory, and then whatever you're left with is not the $10,000, probably more around the tune of $1,000. So that's another thing people should also keep in mind when starting a business. Of course, that gap gets bigger, and you're able to get more money, but um, everybody gets paid before you. So in hard times, the business owner is the one who suffers.
Amazing. I think I'll have to ask our editing team to put a mic drop kind of like sound and emoji on this. I could not top that. I think that summed it up pretty well and accurate. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time, Noor.
Thank you very much for
Really
having me, Hussein. It was
appreciate
an
it.
absolute pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure our listeners learned a lot and will be inspired by this story. How can they reach out to you after this episode if they want to stay in touch or follow your journey?
For sure, yeah. Follow me at the Nour Habliza on Instagram, at Royal Auto Group of London if you want to support the business. And just feel free to follow me, DM me, Nour Habliza on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to have chats, discuss anything, even if it's not about business. You want to talk about basketball, I love basketball. So again, just feel free. You guys can always reach me anywhere.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.